beg of you, I plead of you, be reconciled to God. And then he says that God made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, so that in him, in Jesus, we might become the righteousness of God. That's that's the result that we become. When we become reconciled to God, we become the righteousness of God, and we are forgiven. When I was little, I have 3 sisters. Most of you know that. I'm the second of 4 girls, no brothers. We call it the perfect family. And so we fought. I mean, siblings fight, right? Now, nobody fought with Missy. She was the baby. She was adorable. She still is adorable. And I'm 9 years older than she is. I'm 15. She's 6. What 15-year-old fights with a 6-year-old? I mean, that would just be silly. So she, nobody really fought with her. Georgianne did a little bit. There was 6 years between them. But if any 2 of us were fighting, and even to this day, if any 2 of us are having a disagreement, the likelihood is very high that it's Georgianne and me. Just, we're the most alike, and so we would fight. And my mother used to say, I have never known any children who fight as much as you do. And we were adults before we realized she was an only child. Of course, she's never seen siblings fight. She didn't have any of them. So, and we fought. I don't think we fought any more than anybody else, but we fought. And when we did, my mother, we called it kiss and make up. My mother would make us, hug each other and say, I'm sorry, and whatever. And I think a lot of parents do that. But here's the thing. My favorite parenting book is called Shepherding a Child's Heart. And here's what Ted Tripp says in there. He says that forcing an apology that isn't sincere isn't commendable. It's condemnable. Think about this. Let's say Jake and I have a disagreement, and we haven't been very nice to each other, and he says to me, I'm sorry, Mrs. Keyser, will you forgive me? And I say, yeah, I forgive you. That's just not right. What's going on?
That's still a normal schedule. Yeah.
What time is it?
3:30.
10:30? Nothing's supposed to ring at 10:30.
No, our class
Our
is.
normal class, like without.
Oh, so it's on, okay.
30.
We're done at 10:47. So anyway, that's not, you don't really feel sorry, right? I mean, yeah, I'm saying the words, I forgive you. My heart hasn't changed. That's not forgiveness. Forgiveness is heart change, is really forgiving that person. Now, here's what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not forgetting it ever happened. Forgiveness is not, having to remain in a relationship or trust a person that is not trustworthy. You're not saying, you can forgive someone for something they have done, but also learn, I can't trust this person. Like, let's say you told a friend something in confidence, and it's really personal, and it's really deep, and it gets around to everybody. And that's the only person you've told. And you know that person was the one that told people. I've had a couple friends in my life that I've learned I'm not going to say anything personal to them. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to, tell them something that I don't want everyone to know, because whenever I tell that person, everybody ends up knowing. Now, that doesn't mean I haven't forgiven them for that. It means that I'm wise. It doesn't mean you have to trust a person who's not trustworthy. Some people are just not safe. So that's not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is choosing not to use that against the person, not to hold it over their head. And to tell it, so you're holding it over their head when you tell others, do you know what she did to me? You haven't forgiven, right? Or if you bring it back, say, okay, are you going to do that again to me? Like you did, we started to have a disagreement. Are you going to do that again? No, now I'm holding it over Jake's head. I'm using it as a weapon against him. That means you haven't forgiven. Choosing to forgive means choosing not to hold it over their head, not to use it as a weapon against them. I'm going to give you an example, and I'm sorry if I've told you this story before, but it's a good story, and Megan and he and I I told you I talked about my parents a lot. This is a story about my father. My father retired from the Air Force in 1977 and went to work for ConAgra. He was vice president of ConAgra. And we didn't have a family vacation until 1982. And we used to take yearly family vacations, but he was so busy with his job and everything that we, it had been 5 years since we'd had a family vacation, so they planned this month-long family vacation. And my dad bought a van. He bought a van that was similar to our vans out there, only 1982 style, and then he paid to have it converted into what was called a conversion van. You sometimes see them on the roads now. They have the weird windows and stuff, and they were all the rage, trust me, in the early 80s. And so in the back it had this nice couch that laid down into like a futon bed, and then it had four captain's chairs, and then the front. I mean, it was just a sweet.
So it was an
van.
RV?
What?
It was an RV?
It wasn't an RV, it was a van. It was a great big van. And so he paid money to do that, and then they plotted out this whole long vacation. We started here in Nebraska, went across Nebraska, up into the Black Hills, across Wyoming, across Idaho, visited friends in Idaho, went to San Francisco, Sacramento. We went somewhere, did we go to Las Vegas, I think? I don't know, I think we did. And went to Hoover Dam, yeah. So did that, went down to Los Angeles, and then went to Disney World, and then to San Diego, across Utah into New Mexico and Arizona. We went to the Grand Canyon, came back up Colorado, picked my grandmother up in Dodge City, Kansas, and then came home. Month long, elaborate. We were staying sometimes we stayed with friends, but mostly we stayed at different military. We stayed at El Toro Marine Base in Southern California, and we stayed at military bases because my dad, of course, was retired military, and so it was cheaper, and also we could stay in VIP headquarters, or VIP quarters, which is wonderful. So we had this long thing. So we set out on our trip, and we're in western Nebraska, and I am driving, and I look at the oil needle on the van, and I realize it's going down. But my dad's asleep in the back, and I thought, well, I won't wake Daddy. I'll just, when we switch places, I'll tell him that, he needs to put some oil in. So we've switched places, and I forget to tell him. This is one of the reasons why I'm not so worried about my bad memory right now, because I was 20, and I had a bad memory then. So I forget to tell him, and we are between, I will never forget this, Bassett and Ainsworth, Nebraska, and the van goes clunk, clunk, stop. And that's when I say, oh yeah, Daddy, I forgot to tell you, the oil gauge was going down. The oil gauge was done. There was no oil in the engine. Now, I didn't know what happened when that happens. I know now that the engine dies. There's nothing you can do. You need a completely new engine. You changed my lesson plans today. That's what they're hearing about.
Oh, very good.
We're talking
But
about
I
forgiveness.
just got off a very fun phone call with Angela and her mom, and I promised her I'd send her pictures. She wants to see pictures of the school. So can I just take a picture?
Oh yeah, absolutely you can. And we're filming right now. Hi, Angela. Mrs. Schrock says hi.
And then I'm going to take a picture of you going this
Oh.
way. And so I took a picture. You guys look very lovely. Well,
Love
except
that.
for the three guys. You look very
Okay. So we, and I'll tell you this, in the moment when my father realized I knew the oil gauge was going down, I didn't know how bad that was, and I didn't tell him, he was angry. In fact, he told me, you're gonna walk with me to the nearest farmhouse. And as we were walking, now he didn't yell and scream because that wasn't my dad, but he was saying, sis, you should have told me, sis, I mean, this is bad, this is really bad, you should have told me. And I believe that somewhere on that walk, my father forgave me. And so we get to the farmhouse, they call a tow truck, the tow truck takes us back, we stay in a nasty hotel overnight, and leave our van at the mechanics, and they look at it the next day and they say, your engine's done, you need a completely new engine, we can't do that here, but we can put oil in your car and give you oil to take with you, and you're gonna need to put a quart of oil in
70 miles, I think it was, and you can get yourself back to Omaha and get your engine changed. So we turned around, first day of our vacation, went all the way back home, and we started our vacation a week later. As an adult, I can't imagine what had to happen to completely make everything a week later for our vacation. But here's the thing. I just told you that somewhere on that walk to the farmhouse, my father forgave me. Here's how I know. From the time we were walking to that farmhouse to the day he died, he never brought it up again. Not once. Not ever. Not even teasing me. Yeah, well, I guess I need an oil change. Remember that time that... Never. Never. Not even as a joke. He chose not to hold that over me and not to use it as a weapon against me. That's forgiveness. And so what Paul is saying here when he says, God made him who never sinned, who knew no sin, to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. He's saying, and when he says, I implore you, be reconciled with God, it means we are made completely new. And he doesn't hold that over us anymore. He forgives us completely. I don't know about your sin, but my sin is nasty. And Paul is telling us, it's gone. You've been made new. I won't hold any of it against you. Not the sin you've done in the past, not the sin you're doing now, not the sin you'll do in the future. I won't hold any of it against you. I will see you and I will see Jesus when I see you. I will see his righteousness. You've given him his righteousness. Who's in cross country? Anybody in cross country? In cross country. So 2 days ago, the heat index was 110 degrees. What did your clothing look like when you got back from that run?
Well, my groins, I didn't run.
What, you didn't run? Oh, yeah, right.
I ran 1 mile, but I was kind of sweaty.
Can you imagine what the boys especially, what their shirts and their shorts, they probably took off their shirts, look like after running in that? That's nasty, right? That's just...
On Monday, it was
I'll tell you right
terrible.
now, if we could weaponize teenage boy smell, we would have the greatest weapon known. And that's the picture I think we need to get of our sin, is this nasty, wet, gross stuff. And what 2 Corinthians 5 is telling us is God takes all of that away, and he doesn't just like, I'm going to clean it up. He gives us a completely new and completely righteous clothing on us. We are clothed as Christ. And that's amazing. And so I think Paul knew the depth of his sin. I mean, there's one point where he says, "O wretched man that I am, who will rescue me from this body of death?" I mean, it's strong language. And he knew he had been a persecutor of Christians. I mean, it doesn't get much worse than that, right? I mean, he used to kill Christians. He used to imprison Christians. How's God going to forgive that? He did, though. And he made Paul completely new. And I think that's part of why Paul is so passionate here, saying, I implore of you, I beg of you, I plead with you, be reconciled with God, be made right with God, be given the righteous robes of Christ instead of your filthy, sweaty rags. And that's the offer he's giving us. And for the life of me, I can't understand why wouldn't everyone want that? Why wouldn't everyone go, not only do I want that, give it to me, I want to tell everybody I've ever known. I want them to know. And that's why Paul's so passionate. We're ambassadors. Get out there. Tell people about Jesus, because it is the only way. It is the only way we can be made right with God, is through Christ. And it's not only the only way I can be made right and you can be made right, but it's the only way that anyone can be made right. And so Mrs. Schrag's words this morning about the so that we might become the righteousness of God just really spurred all of those thoughts in me. So I wanted to share those with you. We're done with the lecture. When you come back on Monday, we will do the lecture for chapter 1. So I don't know, this isn't homework, but if you have a minute to just kind of read through the questions that you answered for that a little bit,
it might be helpful, but it's just an introduction to the Gospel of John, so I want to bring that as a question. Got it?